Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sunday Night Wrap-Up Podcast, week number 8 in the NFL. Paul Kelly and the publisher of FantasyGuru.com, John Hansen, here with you on another Sunday night, a wet and windy one up and down the East Coast, John, as you and I are both dealing with Hurricane Sandy here, but always good to be talking football on a Sunday night.
Yes, and you mentioned the hurricane. Just so listeners know and subscribers, if we go black early in the week here, you know what happened, because we're all basically in southern New Jersey, the FantasyGuru.com headquarters, right on the shoreline there, probably 2 miles from the bay. You're pretty close to the ocean in the bay, and I'm a little further away in the state, but we're all under serious hurricane watch. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but that's why we're going to record this podcast a little early, just to make sure we get it in, because we've got to break down Week 8.
Yep, and a couple of games today affected a little bit by the weather from this hurricane. We'll get to those as we cover all the games of the day, and we'll begin in Chicago, where the Panthers were leading the Bears most of this game today, but the Bears pull it out late. 23-22 is your final. Let's start with the Bears on offense, where Matt Forte carried 15 times, 70 yards and a score. Catches 5 passes out of the backfield to help you out in a PPR. Brandon Marshall, 9 for 98. Didn't score today. And for Jay Cutler, the second game in a row, John, that he hasn't topped 200 yards.
Yeah, Marshall had a couple of balls thrown to him in the end zone. I believe he almost scored on one, but yeah. I continue to use that word. I used it this morning, bogart. He's going to bogart the targets here. 14 targets, 9 grabs. You can't use anyone else here in the receiving corps because it's all Marshall, and there's just not a lot of production right now. The O-line let him down big time. They made the Carolina Panther defensive front look like the 85 Bears. Ton of sacks. 6 sacks he was sacked, Cutler. So, when you look at the team, you've got an O-line issues. You've got a good running attack and a very good defense. Not exactly a recipe for success for fantasy. So we didn't rank Cutler high this week. We had him really low, actually, and we'll probably continue to do that, Paul.
Yeah, Michael Bush, 3 carries, 5 yards in a game that they're playing from behind. Tough for him to get his numbers. And, with Alshon Jeffrey out, looking for another receiver to step up here, but really nobody has the last couple of weeks.
Nah, Earl Bennett would be okay if they were going to throw it a little bit more. Cutler's attempts under 30, 28 attempts here, and he would be the next guy in line. 4 targets, 3 for 47. Did have a 24-yard catch. The tight end, Kellen Davis, scores every 8 games, it seems, although he did score 5 touchdowns last year. Hester, not a factor. And you mentioned Bush. Boy, you want to talk about a small margin for error. I mean, we had him pretty high this week simply because it was a bye week, and you figure they were going to run the ball a lot. We had him at I don't know where we had him at running back, 25 with a couple of guys off the board from Thursday night. But you can't really use him with any confidence right now because if he doesn't score, he's worthless.
On the other side for the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton throws for over 300 yards, no touchdowns on the day. Really not playing that well as of late. Turned it over a couple of times in this game. Steve Smith, 7 catches for 118. Actually his best game of the year, even though he hasn't scored the entire year, John. But let's talk about Jonathan Stewart, who has now becoming the quote-unquote feature back in this offense. Did carry the ball 17 times today, 21 touches for 80 total yards. That's not bad. Didn't score. But what are we thinking about this backfield situation right now?
Well, it was somewhat encouraging for Stewart, but I thought that he'd be a little bit more of the guy. It seems like they're still really just groping for something to hang their hats on with this rushing attack because D'Angelo did get 11 carries, and they operated out of the what the heck? They ran plays with Newton, the read option. They ran the read option a couple of. I lost it there for a second. They ran the read option a couple times with D'Angelo, so they're still trying to figure it out. But decent enough sign with Stewart getting the 17 attempts because, as you mentioned, he does get targets every week. They do not throw the football to D'Angelo. So at least in a PPR, he got you 7 points in the passing game, along with his 4.2 in the rushing game. It's not horrible, but the ultimate problem with Carolina's rushing attack is they just can't run the ball. Their offensive line doesn't block well at all, and these guys are talented backs too. Can you imagine if you had some low-end guys running behind this line? It would be really ugly. Yeah, so you can't use D'Angelo. You still can't. Stewart is viable when the matchup especially looks good. Keep in mind it wasn't a great matchup here. But I did write this morning that I felt that Cam would have a pretty good game. He did, all things considered. Obviously, the 2 interceptions were bad. I quickly saw the pick 6, and it looked like Newton made a horrible decision, but I missed that. I guess Smith kind of fell down on the route, but he totally threw it flat-footed. That's never a good thing. I don't care if the receiver falls or not. But and I also wrote this morning that Smith would be really, really active. It was a brutal matchup, but we figured he'd be really active. Boy, 16 targets. Hard to complain about that, but that really speaks to another problem. No other weapons here. And Brandon LaFell got really hurt. He had a 62-yard catch that really helped Newton's numbers. I didn't see anything on him, but he got injured. He looked pretty bad. I don't think he returned. And of course, Newton also fumbled as he was running into the goal line, or else he would have really had a nice day for fantasy.
Yeah, and Greg Olsen, a guy who for a few weeks there seemed like he could be a guy you could count on, a tight end, hasn't topped 37 yards receiving in any of his last 3 games. So certainly, a guy you have to back off a bit there if you've been rolling with Greg Olsen.
I liked him this week, I'll admit it, but it was logic. I figured that they probably wouldn't run it all that well, and the Bears do give up touches or catches to tight ends. And with those excellent corners, see, that's an example of poor coaching. He did get 5 targets, but that's a game where you've got to make Olsen a featured part of your game plan. The Bears give up catches to tight ends, period. And their corners, again, are excellent. So, it's a bad job by them. Because Smith, he catches 7 balls, but his catch rate was under 50%. He had 16 targets. So, we love Steve Smith, and, force him the ball here and there, but make Greg Olsen the go-to guy in this game to move the sticks, and they didn't do it, and they lost.
Ugly game of the day in Cleveland, rainy, windy, and horrible offense today. My goodness. 7-6 is your final score. Cleveland over San Diego. And coming in, Trent Richardson dealing with the ribs, played last week with the ribs, was very ineffective at Indianapolis, gave it another go this week, but a lot of fantasy owners struggling with whether or not they should use him. That answer turned out to be a resounding yes as he runs for 122 yards and a touchdown. Looked very good in this game. So if you started him, you're very, very happy today.
Once again, there was no way of knowing last week, week 7, that it was going to be that fragile. And the reason we ranked him high last week was pretty much what played out this week. He was still injured, but he practiced all week. So you're like, okay, but had this been last week, it would have been fine. But we saw what happened in week 7. So even though he did work out all week, we couldn't, it's one of these things. This is what drives us crazy about fantasy. Hopefully most people out there, he's the best option, and you sucked it up and you started him. We only had him at like 20. Again, we couldn't. I talked to a guy who covers the team this morning, Paul, who said that he wasn't so sure about Richardson, and he was sure that if he was having any problems, they would have rolled with Hardesty. So it's unfortunate for those who sat him, but at least you can have confidence going forward. He did look very good.
Brandon Weeden completed just 11 passes in this game. Really just his first bad game, though, since the opening game of the season. He's been pretty reliable so far this year.
I don't know how much of it's weather. I mean, are we getting this soft to where we got a little bit of rain out there? The field conditions looked fine. It was raining. Are we getting that soft, Paul, to where we got to back off of quarterbacks? And I understand Weeden's a rookie and Phil Rivers is pretty darn shaky, but is it that bad to where you got a little bit of wind and rain where we just got to completely back off these quarterbacks and these passing attacks? I think that's fairly pathetic. It's football, for God's sakes. You're professionals. You should be able to throw some forward passes in the rain, for God's sake.
Josh Gordon catches 3 of those 11 completions for 46 yards, does not score this week. Greg Little gave us a little bit.
Scored.
You're right. He did almost score. Right. Yeah, almost scored. And then Greg Little gave us sort of a little false hope last week, played reasonably well. This week he's back to dropping balls, 2 catches, 28 yards.
Yeah, I did see a nice 22-yard catch, but that was pretty much all of his production in one game. So, yeah, it was ugly. Bad game for fantasy, no doubt. For the Chargers, boy, I actually liked Robert Meacham. I went on national radio this morning, sticking my head out there on Bobby Meacham as a reach play, Paul, and he dropped a touchdown. Thanks for nothing, Bobby.
Oh, he had an easy one right in his breadbasket. He dropped it and didn't catch a pass in this entire game. It was ugly all the way around for the Chargers. Ryan Matthews, 26 touches for 104 yards. You're loving the 26 touches. Anytime a back goes for over 100 yards, you really can't complain. But here's where I'm at with Matthews, John, and see if you agree. I mean, the issue with him, he's not the goal line back. He's not their hurry-up back, which in this game kind of hurt him when you see Ronnie Brown catching 7 balls for 85 yards. Those two things kind of limit him a little bit, don't you think?
Absolutely. What is he? Yeah, there's a trust issue on the goal line. Now, we haven't seen a straight-up goal line carry.
He did lose one. He did lose a fumble, too, in this game.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, my God.
Yeah, now he lost a fumble, and they did leave him in, so, I mean, at least that's a good sign, but he did lose a fumble in this game.
Yeah, it was a weather. I guess you can cut him a tiny bit of slack, but that's ugly. But you bring up a great point, because I've been bringing it up about Jackie Battle. I felt if it's first and goal at the 3, I think it's Jackie Battle time. We haven't seen that in about a month, though, because they rarely score. But Ronnie Brown is the third down back. It's time to – I finally added him to the waiver wire over the weekend. I was like, you know what, I got to add this guy because while he's hard to start, he is the third down back, and they trust him in pass protection and all that. So 8 targets, 7 grabs for 85. Pick him up if you're dying in a PPR league because I don't think this is going to change.
Yeah, Malcolm Floyd catches 4 for 43 in this game. He's on pace for over 1,000 yards on the season, even though he's only got 1 touchdown. But Antonio Gates, who was a beast in the last game, today definitely came up small, just 2 catches, 14 yards.
Right along with the entire offense, and he did have a ball thrown to him in the end zone. He was like triple covered. Somebody tweeted me, how could you possibly rank him so high? I think we had him at like 5. Well, first of all, he is Antonio Gates, for God's sakes. And second of all, he did score 2 touchdowns in his last game, for God's sakes. Not like he's killing people. But it is time to back off. The question is how far. Who would you rather have, Paul? Antonio Gates or Vernon Davis? Because they're both killing people.
Yeah, they really are. All right, next game.
Ultimately, real quick, and look, if you disagree, that's fine. But I'd rather lose with Antonio Gates than try to win with guys like Martellus Bennett, Dustin Keller, Greg Olson, Jermichael Finley, guys like that. You know, maybe a couple exceptions. Heath Miller at this point probably needs to be viewed as a better fantasy play than Gates. Maybe Pettigrew, who heated up a little bit today. But otherwise, for the most part, you're still going to start Gates. You got to have him. Let's say there's no buys. He's got to be a top 6 guy still. I'd rather lose with Gates than try to win with a scrub because the week I feel like I'm a genius and I start a guy like Jared Cook with a great matchup, that's the week Gates scores 2 touchdowns.
Detroit playing indoors didn't have to deal with any weather. They win at home 28-24 over Seattle. This is an exciting game. And we'll start with the Lions offense. Matt Stafford throws 49 passes, which is not at all unusual for him in the Lions offense. 352 yards passing, 3 scores, 2 of them to Titus Young. Bit of a coming-out party today for him. 9 catches, 100 yards, and those 2 touchdowns with Nate Burleson out. He has an opportunity here to really step up. And I saw you tweet earlier, John, that he could be sort of the big breakout receiver of the second half of the season.
Yeah, because he'd been limited a little bit with an injury early in the season. He had some maturity issues to work through, but all reports out of Detroit in the offseason was that he was lighting it up in the OTAs and the mini camps and in training camp and all that. He is a certain type of player, kind of like a Deshaun Jackson, doesn't run quite as well, but I just think it's a great opportunity. It's a great environment for a guy like Titus Young playing alongside Calvin Johnson in an offense that features a quarterback who can sling it with the best of them, even though he's having a bad year. They're going to throw it a lot, too. So you add it all up. Titus Young, I gave him a lot of love on the waiver wire for those in smaller leagues or those with leagues that had him dropped. I think when you really look at it, he is going to probably make plays every week going forward, not maybe every single week, but in a pretty competitive league or a deeper league, 14 teams or greater, you can absolutely roll with this guy, I think, at this point as your number 3. And also Ryan Broyles, who did score. They've been talking him up. He's another sneaky pickup because, once again, Calvin is just – now, I know he ran into Richard Sherman in this one, but the body language, had another touchdown, kind of knocked away in the red zone. He kind of looks to me now, he's dealing with that knee. I'm a big body language guy. He kind of looks like the Calvin from when, Dan Orlovsky was throwing the ball. It was like, you just look at him and you're like, man, he feels like giving up out there. So that's not good for Calvin. That's just not good.
Yeah, he kind of looks defeated out there. And last week caught 3 for 34. This week 3 for 46. Just one touchdown on the season. To me, that's the biggest thing that's hard to. One touchdown on the season with Calvin. So that's the question. What do you do with him? Do you buy low? And if you have him, do you just ride out the storm with him?
I ride it out. I don't care. I'd rather lose. Sometimes in fantasy, you just got to suck it up. I'm in that celebrity league. Did a good draft. We drafted well. Granted, I haven't made any moves on the waiver wire. 0 moves. Too busy working. But look, I won this week, I think. Beat MJD, even though I started 2 guys who are on a bye. I can tell you how much I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
I got Stafford. I got Steve Smith. I'm just starting them every week. There's nothing else I can do. I got a good squad. Sometimes you just suck it up, and it is what it is, and just start them. Just keep starting them. As for buying low on Calvin, hey, why not? Why not? I understand it's ugly. It's probably not going to get beautiful, but he is still getting red zone targets. The matchups are a little bit better, and certainly we saw some signs of life from Stafford.
Mikel LaSure, 10 carries, 46 yards. He had most of that early, and we saw a lot of Bell in the second half. Is anything going on with LaSure? I didn't see him get injured in this game, but I don't know if it was a function of them playing from behind, and maybe Bell got more snaps in the second half.
Head coach addressed it after the game and basically said that it was a hot hand thing. So, yeah, that's we see these situations in a ton of backfields. His hold on the starting job isn't exactly it's not exactly Emmitt Smith circa '95 on the Cowboys. So that's a consideration going forward. We can't go all in on LaSure when all the teams are done with their bye weeks. He's going to be someone who needs to be ranked 25 and below. So he's a third running back, flex starter, third running back. That's pretty much what he is. And they did make Kevin Smith active in this game for the first time in a while.
For Seattle, it was interesting that they were playing with a lead for much of this game, yet they threw 35 passes versus just 19 runs on the day. It's a little bit unusual for the Seahawks offense. Wilson, 236 yards passing, couple of touchdowns, one to Sidney Rice, and the other one to Zach Miller, who nobody is using for fantasy at this point. But really, Marshawn Lynch had the long 77-yard touchdown run, but besides that, kind of a quiet day on offense for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I guess maybe they thought that the Lions secondary was banged up. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like Sidney Rice as a reach this week. They were banged up with a lot of injuries back there for Detroit, so they opened it up a little bit for Russell Wilson, and he acquitted himself pretty darn well. Took care of the football, did throw one interception, but on 35 attempts, that's pretty good for a rookie who's limited and usually kind of held back. Golden Tate, 7 targets, and he catches all 7. You can't really use him and rely on him. It's still, I believe, just Sidney Rice. They do those shot plays. Of course, they didn't really do it today, but Sidney Rice does score. The bottom line is he's clearly the number 1 receiver, the prototypical number 1, and he's healthy. And when he's healthy, he's certainly got a chance.
Yep, he scored in 2 of his last 3. As we move on to Green Bay at home against Jacksonville, a game where we figured the Packers would just roll right over on Jacksonville, but it didn't really play out that way. Packers win 24-15, but this game was pretty much close throughout, at least within a score or two the entire way. Aaron Rodgers for the Packers throws for under 200 yards. I don't think anybody on the planet saw that coming. Did get you 2 touchdowns, 1 to Cobb, 1 to Driver, who nobody's using for fantasy. But a little bit disappointing if you're looking at Rodgers' numbers on the day, but what are you going to do? I mean, he's your guy. You're going to roll with him no matter what. But I want to talk about Alex Green, who last week had 20 carries for just 35 yards, continuing to get opportunities today, 22 more carries, 54 yards, but clearly having trouble breaking free for any big runs.
Yeah, and I talked to Adam Shine on SiriusXM NFL Radio. I don't even remember if we said it over the air or during the break. It might have been during the break. But he said that he talks to Mike McCarthy every week on the show, and McCarthy loves Green. And he's the guy, clearly. He's averaging like 20 carries a game the last 3 games. Problem is, just not very good right now. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. He trips a lot. I see that. He doesn't get a lot of room to run. You would think in this offense that teams would play a lot of nickel and dime and kind of dare him to run. Doesn't seem to be the case. So, and I liked him in this game. I think that was very logical. You didn't expect it to be a contest all the way. He does get 22 carries, and he did get 6 targets and 4 catches for 28, but it's just not happening. He is at best a flex, bye-week guy. He's a work in progress, I think it's fair to say. I think he's a pretty good back. I still think he's their guy, but I don't think he's really showing us the best he has to offer right now.
Yeah, weird game here. Rodgers throws for 186, and on the other side, Gabbert throws for over 300 yards for the Jaguars. So definitely a weird stat line for him as well, coming off 5 straight games in which he was under 200 yards. He throws for over 300 in this game, along with a touchdown. And Cecil Shorts, the guy seems to be coming on a little bit here, John. 8 catches, 116 yards on the day. He's gone for over 70 yards in 4 of his 7 games so far this year. He seems to be the one receiver who maybe has a chance to start coming on.
Yeah, I've been listening to him for a month in the waiver wire. I liked him. In fact, I tweeted this preseason, I said, when LaRon Robinson gets hurt this year, Shorts may be a guy to pick up. The problem is, are you brave enough to start Cecil Shorts, really is the question. So going forward, though, if it's going to be Gabbert, you got to give the guy a chance. Of course, LaRon Robinson, who was inactive again, when he's back, that's a bit of a deal breaker because Blackman did get 8 targets in the game, and Robinson would probably start with Blackman, but it is what it is. You mentioned the production. The kid's making plays here, and he got 12 targets and had a big day. Again, it's how do you start him, though? How do you start him? That's the problem.
MJD out again this week, and Rashad Jennings filling in again. He went for over 100 yards and a score last week. Today, 17 carries, 59 yards, but also very active as a check-down option for Blaine Gabbert. 6 catches, 56 yards. And you see that stat line, John, and it makes you wonder, why didn't they throw the ball to MJD that much when he was in there?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't love him on the ground in this one, but did bring up that a lot to be said for his action in the passing attack. 8 targets, amazing. Yeah, it's a great point, but the bottom line is you got to start Jennings as at worst a number 3 when all the teams are back from byes because, again, volume. There's a ton to be said for a guy who's pretty much a lock to get 20 touches every week. I don't care against anyone, too. I pretty much roll with him. He may not put up big numbers, but in the PPR, it's nice digits right there with the 8 targets and the 6 catches.
Miami Dolphins killed the Jets today, 30-9 in one of those games that was affected a bit by the hurricane, but it didn't seem to bother the Dolphins too much. Ryan Tannehill left this game with an injury. Matt Moore came in and finished up at quarterback. He did throw a touchdown late to Anthony Fasano, but a lot of talk during the week between Reggie Bush and some of the Jets defenders, and Reggie carried 14 times for 59 yards, only caught 1 pass. And pretty much a 50-50 split on the touches between him and Daniel Thomas today, who also scored a touchdown.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that, honestly. I knew Thomas was back, and I figured he'd get some goal line work. And believe it or not, they kind of use him as the 3rd down back, even though Bush is there. But that's problematic because if Thomas is going to be pretty much the goal line back, at least 50% of the time 3rd down back, and also get up to 15 carries, 10 to 15 carries, that is a problem. So something is going on with Bush. Maybe the knee is still bothering him. He had a couple of nice runs again, popped off a nice 19-yarder. So we'll investigate further, but maybe we need to pull back from Bush as well because here again, yet another backfield that we have trust issues now with multiple players in the mix for significant touches.
As far as receivers go, really the only 2 guys that you consider, Devon Best caught 4 for just 28 yards. Hartline, we knew this wasn't a great matchup for him. He catches 4 for 41. Here's the thing with Hartline. I mean, he had 2 really big games. He had the big game against Oakland, had the huge game against Arizona. Besides that, he hasn't hit double-digit fantasy points in any of his other 5 games, even in a PPR. So he's really just, making a name on those 2 games. The rest of the time, he's really been pretty disappointing.
Well, he's had bad matchups, too, though. He really has. He saw Revis, then he saw Cromartie, then he saw Patrick Peterson, who he went off in that game, actually. And there was a couple other ones. It was Cortland Finnegan one week. Yep. I mean, he has had bad luck here with the matchups. He actually had a pass thrown to him in the end zone that I saw, and I was a little surprised because he got those 4 for whatever it was, 40, somewhat early. So let me look at his schedule real quick, because if Tannehill's in there, he's still not a lost cause. All right, so look at it this way. He's got Indy coming up in Week 9. There's a good one. Then he's got Tennessee. That's a good one. Then Buffalo is good.
Excellent.
So then he's got Seattle. That's bad. And then he's New England, which is good. San Fran bad, and then Jacksonville, Buffalo. So I think if Tannehill's healthy, Hartline is going to still be on the radar here down the stretch.
Let's move it over to the Jets offense and Mark Sanchez, who had to throw 54 times in this game. That's never, ever going to be a good thing for the Jets offense. 283 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Chaz Schillen's got the touchdown, who, of course, nobody is using. But let's talk about Sean Green. 15 carries, 77 yards, did not score here, but did catch a couple of passes. And, look, 106 total yards on the day. You'll take it. That makes 3 pretty productive games in a row for Sean Green.
Yeah, he popped off a longer run in the game, too, which was a good sign, 36-yarder. And as I mentioned the last 2 weeks, we don't love it, but with those other guys injured, he's going to get targets. He really came through last week with, I think, 6 catches, but only 5 targets for 229. Yeah, he's looking, he's hanging in there. I think they're all kind of hanging in there. The offensive line seems to be blocked for the run a little bit better this year, a little bit more consistent. As for Sanchez, I kind of liked him as a little bit of a reach simply because I didn't think they'd run at all on Miami, which you take away that one run, they really didn't. And I figured they gave up a lot of catches to receivers, to wideouts, and they absolutely did. Gates with 7 catches, you kidding me? For 82 yards?
Where did he come from? My goodness.
Yeah. Dustin Keller is active. A little disappointed in Jeremy Curley. 11 targets, so you like that, but only 5 for 43. And Stephen Hill just missed a couple of touchdowns that, he's clearly shaky. He's hard to trust. Very hard. Very hard.
Next game up, Atlanta at Philadelphia, and another rainy and windy game, but the Falcons' offense looks fantastic, especially Matt Ryan, who completed 22 of 29 for 262 and 3 first-half touchdowns, 1 to Julio Jones, 1 to Jason Snelling, who, of course, nobody is using for fantasy, and Drew Davis filling in for Harry Douglas as their slot guy, their third receiver. He scored today as well. When you score 30 points and you're playing with a lead the whole time, Michael Turner going to get a lot of carries. He did, 24 in this game, but just 58 yards. Now, the last time out, he had 11 carries, 33 yards in their last game. Today, just 58 yards on the ground, no touchdowns in either of those games. And actually, Jacquizz Rodgers had the better day of the 2 backs today.
It's really a what have you done for me lately situation with Turner, and he hasn't done really much lately, so it's time to pull back. He's a tough guy to get a handle on because just when you think he's dead, he pops off a long run or gets like 29 carries, but it is what it is. Currently, he's not doing much, and you mentioned Rodgers. That was a little bit of an eye-opener. Of course, it was really all on one run, 43-yarder he popped off, but time to pull back from Turner, too. When the bye weeks come, when they go, when they're no longer in the picture, he is probably a number 3, ideally a number 3. And Julio Jones is a good example of what I was saying earlier about Gates. When you have these guys who either have a great resume or massive potential, you just got to suck it up here. I know it's frustrating when these low-end scrubs are putting up better numbers than your number 2 draft pick, but the cream does tend to rise to the top here. He catches all 5 of his targets. Another ball thrown to him in the end zone that was almost a score, so he could have scored twice. We kind of saw this coming. I should have listed him again last week as a player to trade for. Granted, we did list him twice the last month or so. But classic buy low guy, classic cream rises to the top guy. Don't be surprised if Julio lights it up here in the second half.
Yeah, meanwhile, Roddy White, 3rd game in a row under 75 yards receiving. So take it over to the Eagles offense, and Michael Vick, 191 yards passing, one score, ran for 42 yards, and LaShawn McCoy kind of was the offense here, scored both of their touchdowns. Outside of that, no other player had more than 59 yards of offense.
You know, every year when we do our offensive line article, we always have the obligatory line about how it all starts up front, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's true, because I don't think Vic is as bad as it looks. I don't think it's as bad as the numbers indicate. The O-line is bad for the Eagles, and it's absolutely killing their offense. Obviously, they've had some injuries. Danny Watkins was out. So now, Paul, they were without 3 of their 5 starting linemen in this game to start the season. You know, Jason Peters on IR, Kelsey, the center, out for the season, and Danny Watkins was out. So it's a bad line, and therefore it's a bad offense, and very hard to trust. I don't think the weather was a factor. Someone sent an email in that, you know, we should have done a better job with Vic in the weather. I'm 9 miles from the link, Paul. I stepped outside before the kickoff. It was fine. It was fine. Okay, it wasn't the weather. This is football. Little drizzle, and the wind. Here's another thing, too. The wind's gusting at 30 miles an hour. That doesn't mean it's always 30 miles an hour, and I don't think that was the case. Yeah, it gusts here and there intermittently to 30, but it was generally in the low to mid-20s, which you're a professional. You got a cannon like Vic. The weather wasn't a factor. It was the offensive line for the Eagles. They're killing the entire offense.
Steelers and Redskins. Pittsburgh wins at home 27-12. Ben Roethlisberger, 3 touchdowns on the day. And Jonathan Dwyer, who's been filling in at running back, boy, he's looked pretty good here, John. Last week, 17 carries, 122 yards. This week, another 17 carries, 107 yards. He didn't score, had some... They got down close a couple of times, but you know they had the short touchdown to Heath Miller. They had Leonard Pope caught one in this game, so we didn't get to run one in. But he's been playing very well, filling in at running back.
Yeah, he clearly looks like a guy who is fighting for a job. He sees a little bit of an opportunity here because those windows come rarely in the NFL, and he's doing all he can. So now the question is, because he's just a big load. I think he looks. I don't think he really looks very impressive, but he's a huge man. And he just runs hard, runs it downhill, breaks tackles, and always seems to pop off a long run every game. 34-yarder in this one. He should have scored. He had a goal line carry there, and he missed it probably by an inch. I guess that was when Pope got the 1-yard touchdown. I think that was the drive.
Yeah, I think so.
Or maybe it was when this Johnson guy. I don't even know who the hell he is.
Will Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was that drive. But, we moved them up, way up. I had them at 12 once we saw that Redmond was out. So it's a week-to-week situation, but if you are sitting on Richard Mendenhall, you got to worry a little bit here because Dwyer's been really good. But I still think they'll lean toward a healthy Mendenhall because he's got a lot more juice and versatility and can catch the football and all that. But we'll see. I mean, the Jonathan Dwyer watch is officially on. Don't drop him. That's for sure. He's the ultimate what I call rental player. Use him as long as you can and get as much production out of him as you can. Otherwise, Paul, a little disappointed. I know we had Antonio Brown really high. We had Wallace really high. The matchup was just too good to ignore. Big Ben throws for 3 touchdowns. Very efficient. They were moving the ball up and down the field on the Redskins. They could have done whatever the heck they wanted. So it's one of those things. That's fantasy. When we see a juicy matchup and an offense well-equipped to take advantage, we're going to go all in. Unfortunately, it's not always going to work out, and a lot of times I say, look, there's only one ball, and everyone can't go off because we like Wallace, we like Brown, we like Miller, I even like Emmanuel Sanders a little bit. They all can't go off. Unfortunately, in this one, with a couple of scrubs getting 2 touchdowns, most of them didn't go off, but the matchup was clearly good because the Steelers did whatever the hell they wanted to on offense.
For the Redskins, Fred Davis out for the year. Pierre Garçon remains out with his foot problems, and that opened up some opportunity for Santana Moss, who scored twice last week, did score again in this game earlier this afternoon. But RG3 throws for 177 and a touchdown, only ran for 8 yards, very unusual for him. Really the first, if you want to call it, bad game for fantasy that he's had so far.
Should have done a little bit better, too. A drop touchdown passes and drop passes left and right for the Redskins. Really bad in this game. The Leonard Hankerson one was awful. I mean, Adam Caplan could have caught this pass and taken it to the house for the touchdown or caught it in the end zone. So The receivers did him no favors, and that certainly is a problem here because they don't really have a lot to work with. Maybe we'll see a guy like Des Briscoe. He's pretty talented. Got some size in the red zone that they need, too. Let's get this guy more snaps because Hankerson, it's just like every time we feel like, okay, he's emerging, he just comes up small. So that's a problem. Santana Moss is probably the best bet overall because he's the most consistent guy, but they seem to be still limiting his snaps and limiting him to a slot receiver role. But in a deeper league, you certainly could do worse than Santana, who does have 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games.
Let's move on to Wembley Stadium in London, where it was the Pats and the Rams. And the Rams looked like early they were going to make a game out of this, but it was a blowout, 45-7, Patriots over the Rams. We'll start with Tom Brady, over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns on the day. Huge day for Rob Gronkowski, 8 for 146 and 2 scores with Aaron Hernandez out today. The other 2 touchdowns went to Brandon Lloyd, his only 2 catches of the day, and, good for Lloyd. I mean, he's having kind of a quiet season, so he definitely could use these 2 scores that he had today.
Yeah, I mentioned this morning it was a tough call because the Rams have been pretty good against receivers, but I did mention that Janoris Jenkins was struggling, and they could get him on Jenkins this morning. I mentioned it, and that's exactly what happened on both touchdowns, too. So the Rams got rocked a little bit here by New England, and we got lucky a little bit with Stephen Ridley because Shane Vereen scored. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Woodhead getting some carries, and luckily it was a blowout, and he got volume and popped it off here. But this is an example of what makes it so difficult to rank Ridley every week and project him, because if I knew he was going to get at least 15 carries pretty much every week, and you could, for a true lead back, you can pretty much say that every week. 15 is really not too much to ask, but you can't even expect that from Ridley. So this shows you why you should probably just suck it up and roll with him if at all possible. You could drop him down to your flex starter and just there in that role. I have him in a league where I don't care. He's my flex. I'm starting him every week. Whatever he does, I'll just accept. And I think that's the way to proceed with Stephen Ridley, because he can clearly carry you from that flex spot here and there.
Yeah, I mean, he's been really up and down. He's gone for over 100 yards with a touchdown in 4 of his 8 games. Meanwhile, the other 4 games, nothing of note. If you were using them, you weren't really happy about it. But the 4 games that he has gone over 100 yards, he's scored in each one of those games as well. So clearly that's a formula for success if they give him enough carries. As we take it over to the Rams side of the ball, and Sam Bradford, who looked good early, got the touchdown to Chris Givens. It looked like he got hurt pretty badly in this game, but he ended up coming in, I think, just a play or 2 later, and did play pretty much the entire way. But Clemens came in right at the tail end. But Sam Bradford, just 205 yards and that 1 score, a little bit disappointing considering how bad this Patriots secondary has been all year.
Yeah, very disappointing. And I think 2 things. The injury was definitely a factor, because did you see it live? Because it looked like he was dead.
Oh, yeah, yep.
It looked like he was out for 6 weeks when he got injured. So he didn't even miss a play. And I think ultimately they just got ball controlled to death is what happened. Even though, actually, you look at the time of possession, it's actually equal. But actually, that can't be right. The Rams had the ball for longer. I don't know how that's possible. That makes no sense to me. But I don't know. I got to watch the game. He only attempted 30 passes. You figure they're playing from behind. They didn't run the ball a lot. I don't know what the hell happened. So I'm going to have to watch this, but I am disappointed. Looked like he was going to be good with that. Another 50-yard catch for Chris Givens. 4th game in a row. And very disappointed, too, with Brandon Gibson. But, hey, we took a shot. He looked good last week. Matchup was fantastic. Sometimes you got to play the matchups and accept it. And ultimately, we learn once in a while, though, that there's a reason that most people aren't starting Brandon Gibson, because he's Brandon Gibson.
Yep, Darrell Richardson and Steven Jackson continue to split the touches at running back. Richardson 11 touches, Jackson just 9 touches in this game. Danny Amendola, surprisingly, was practicing this week. They have a bye next week. I'm assuming he's going to play in Week 10. Does he step right back into that lead receiver role in this offense?
I'd say yeah. It's quite. I wonder though if they'll see what is really interesting is that we all know he's a slot receiver, but early in the year when the rookie Givens wasn't ready, Amendola was playing a lot outside. I wonder now if they'll just use him in the slot, which if they do, still basically means he's the go-to guy, and he'll still be PPR gold. You can expect to get 5 to 6 catches a week out of him from the slot, and you would think coming off the bye next week that he'll absolutely play in Week 10.
Indianapolis at Tennessee, and the Colts win 19-13 behind Andrew Luck, almost 300 yards, and the touchdown to Vic Ballard. I mean, what can you say about that play? If you saw it, you know what I'm talking about, the game winner. And Vic Ballard in this game, 13 touches, 71 yards in that touchdown. Even with Donald Brown back, he did get 13 touches. Donald Brown had 14 carries for 80 yards. How do we see this backfield situation shaking out? I mean, DeLon Carter had a touchdown in this game as well, so they kind of used everybody today. But moving forward, how do we think it shakes out?
Yeah, it looks a little ugly here. I think I said here last week that I thought Donald Brown was probably the best bet for this team, and he certainly flashed that today. Looked really good, by the way. 80 yards on the 14 carries. It popped off a couple longer ones. But Vic Ballard's starting to come on, too. He looked good. So we gave him some love here, Vic Ballard. We sent out that news email item when he was set to start because we liked him. And the first game was pretty ugly. Last week was pretty good, and yet again here. So I think we're, unfortunately, probably looking at a running back by committee. I'd still rank it Brown, Ballard, but you mentioned DeLon Carter, who is still in the mix when they're at the goal. I have yet to see them use Vic Ballard maybe once or twice where it's like 1st and goal at the 3. They've been using DeLon Carter in that role over Ballard. So I think it's a committee. I think it's probably, I don't know, let's say 55 Brown, 35 Ballard, and the rest for Carter.
Reggie Wayne catches 7 for 91 in this game. He's on pace for over 120 catches on the year and over 1,700 yards. And we're pretty much halfway through the year, so we're going to see where he ends up. But clearly he's having a fantastic season. As we move over to Tennessee's side of the ball, and Chris Johnson, 23 touches, 117 yards on the day. Didn't score this week, but that's at least 90 yards rushing 4 straight games for Chris Johnson.
Yep, and he looked okay, but here's the problem. Here's the thing. He's had some really good matchups. I know he ran on Houston several weeks ago, and that was a surprise. But now he has, let's take a look at that schedule. He's got Chicago this week, and then Miami. Then the bye. So those are 2 ugly ones. And then he's at Jacksonville, which is decent. And then Houston again at home. Then Indy, Jets, and Green Bay. So for the most part, you should probably hold on him because he's clearly got some momentum these days. But I will say, if you really desperately need wins the next 2-3 weeks, you may want to trade him because I don't know if he runs on Chicago and Miami and then he's off the next week. So I think with this game now behind us, I think it's going to be about a month until Chris Johnson is putting up big numbers because you got that behind Chicago and Miami, a good run defenses.
Yeah, that's a good point. As it pertains to these receivers, Nate Washington, 5 for 69 today. Kendall Wright, 4 for 47 in that fantastic touchdown catch. Kenny Britt caught 3 balls today, had a touchdown called back in this game. Moving forward, all 3 of these guys viable, and which guy do you think, if any, kind of separates themselves moving forward?
Well, considering they lost and considering that Jake Locker really threw the ball well in practice this week, I think they're going to go back to Locker. We'll have to obviously confirm that. And if that's the case, then I got to go Nate Washington because Nate Washington clicks pretty well with Hasselbeck. He's a professional receiver, but when he's on the field with Locker, he gets it done every time because he's a downfield threat. Certainly, Kenny Britt has got potential. You mentioned the touchdown call back, but I did always sense that Hasselbeck loved Britt. So going forward, let's assume it's Locker. I'd rank it Washington, Britt, and Wright. Wright's touchdown, as you mentioned, was brilliant, but he's not a guy who we can count on every week for targets because of Britt and Washington and Cook and all that. But he's clearly a kid who can play. Don't drop him, and you could do worse if you're in a pinch.
Raiders at Chiefs. Oakland wins on the road, 26-16. We'll start with the Raiders on offense. Carson Palmer completed just 50% of his passes in this game for 209 yards, but did get you the 2 touchdowns you probably needed if you started him. But Darren McFadden, let's give this guy some credit here, John, because 29 carries, 114 yards. He earned every yard that he got today. I mean, it was really rough going for a while for him. I think at halftime it was something like 12 carries, 15 yards. I mean, it was ugly early on. This offensive line not giving him a whole lot of room to run. He did bust off a couple longer ones late in this game as they continued to pound away at that Chief defensive front. But Darren McFadden is playing very tough football right now, John.
Yeah, and he's healthy. He's hanging in there. You can say what you want about it. I know it's frustrating, but he is Darren McFadden, for God's sakes. He's getting 30 touches every week. So you just got to suck it up and start him. And unfortunately, at the end of the game, Paul, he almost scored. He just came really close to popping it. And I know we kind of do this when there's a guy that we were high on, and we always hope, oh, he almost did it. But, look, I'd rather have a guy almost do good things than not have a prayer. I'd still like to see him get a little bit more involved in the passing game. 6 targets was pretty good. I saw he drop one of them. I believe it was a good play by the linebacker who knocked it out of his hand. I thought we'd be – one of the reasons we were really high on him is because – and we saw that in week 1, for God's sakes. He was just an animal. We thought he'd be a lot more involved. They'd flex him from the formation. So they've lost their way a little bit. I think that the Jacoby Ford injury was a lot bigger than we thought because of that slot receiver. But, again, we got to give him some credit. He's hanging in there. Just keep starting him. He does have a matchup that is a little scary coming up against Tampa this week, but it's in Oakland at least. Tampa's pretty good against the run, but I don't know how you sit him. Then he's got Baltimore, New Orleans, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, KC, Carolina. That's a pretty good schedule. So
yeah, that is pretty good.
Just roll with the guy. As I said last week, if it's going to make you feel better and you've got other options like maybe Doug Martin, just move him down your depth chart. Okay, now you draft him as your 1, maybe he's your 2. Maybe he did really well. Now he's your 3, and start him every week.
Denarius Moore, 5 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. He has scored 3 weeks in a row. Could have had even more. He had a couple drops in this game, but clearly he is their number 1 guy at receiver.
Yeah, I didn't love him this week. I was a little worried because he's a little bit banged up, and last week he was a little MIA, and I was concerned. Now, he gets a 55-yard catch on a screen pass, so that's really hard to predict. But they got him on Stanford route. I thought the Chiefs would make it a point to put Flowers on him, but they got him on route and they picked on him. But overall, I think we only had him at I moved him up at the last minute there. I think this morning we had him at 26 or something. For the most part, I think at worst a number 3. Start him every week because we love the kid. We all know he's a dynamic playmaker. Palmer likes throwing it to him. They do have to throw it because they're not exactly going to kill teams on the ground, and he's commanding the ball. And how about Haywood Bay? I know it was only 1 catch, but it was a really nice touchdown grab. So they're hanging in there, the Raiders. And Palmer, as you mentioned, he has really quietly had a nice year, all things considered. Behind that shabby O-line and with a shaky receiving core, he's hung in there and played pretty well.
For the Chiefs, Brady Quinn got the start at quarterback and got injured early in this game. Matt Castle came in and played the rest of the way. Offensively, it was pretty ugly all day for the Chiefs, but Jamal Charles carried the ball 5 times, and he led all Chief running backs with 5 carries, by the way, just 4 yards. What is the deal? I mean, what do we know? Jamal Charles only touching the ball 8 times in the game. Why?
Romeo Crennel would tell us, but he'd have to kill us because it's a matter of national security. I'll never forget one time I see Crennel at the Combine in 2005. I just walk up to him, hey, Coach, what's up? How you doing? Yeah, good. I was like, hey, what do you think of that Lee Suggs? Think that kid's pretty good. You guys like him? I really can't say. Really can't say. Oh, really? It's a matter of national security, huh, Romeo? Yeah. Okay, thanks, buddy. No idea. He stinks. He is not a head coach. They don't know what the hell they're doing. That's an embarrassment. That is an embarrassment, unless it comes out that he was injured, which maybe that's possible. But if it doesn't come out that he was hurt, they should be fired on the spot. I mean, that is just repugnant to give this guy 5 carries. Sean Drone getting on the field over him. It's hard because I'm watching a million games at once, and him and McCluster are so similar, but I'm pretty sure I saw him out there for the whole game, Charles. Intermittently, though. He was just like in and out of the mix. It's a joke.
Yeah, and things have gotten pretty ugly here for Dwayne Bowe, too. He hasn't topped 65 yards receiving since week 4. So clearly quarterback play here is really killing Dwayne Bowe right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And he got jacked up on a play that not Brady Quinn, it was Castle, actually, let him too high on a pass and all that. Dexter McCluster, I did mention today, captain checkdown was Quinn, although Quinn, obviously got knocked out of the game. But McCluster is getting targets now. It's 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row. 8 targets, 6 for 54. I guess that's something. But Bowe is kind of dying out here. That's not good. I said to give him one more start this week against that banged-up secondary and depleted, and he didn't exactly come through, so that's terrible.
Giants at Dallas, and the Giants win it 29-24. Giants undefeated at that new Cowboy Stadium. I think they're 4-0 now. We'll start with the Giants on offense, and Eli Manning only throws for 192. No touchdowns on the day, and it had to happen at least once this year. Victor Cruz finally had a bad game for fantasy, just 2 catches, 23 yards. It's his first game of the year without hitting double-digit points in a PPR. But, your guys can't go off every single week. And the Giants, even though they put up 29 points on the day for fantasy, really wasn't a good day for anybody.
No, it's bizarre. And even Ahmad Bradshaw got a lot of his yards real late, grinding it out. I did like Victor Cruz in this game. I thought it would be a big Victor Cruz game, quite frankly, inside, because those guys on the outside had tough matchups. He did get hurt, I know, and he was down, so maybe that was a factor. But ultimately, the fact that they were up 23-0 was the killer, because Elijah Manning only threw it 29 times, and you could never predict this because he put up numbers against his defense. They've had success against his defense, and these two teams usually put up points against each other. So it's just one of those weird, wacky, wild games.
For the Cowboys, Tony Romo had to throw a franchise record 62 times, completed 36 for 437 yards, just 1 touchdown, though, and 4 INTs. Cowboys turned the ball over 6 times in this game. They could not run it at all with DeMarco Murray out. 13 carries, 19 yards for Felix Jones. He bailed you out with a touchdown if you did need to start him in this game. How about Jason Witten? Team record 18 receptions for 167. The fantasy numbers were there for him. Miles Austin piled up catches and yards. Des Bryant, 5 catches for 110. Almost had the touchdown by a fingernail. They waved off that touchdown at the end, but all of these guys came through for fantasy because they had to throw 62 times.
Yeah, sure. I tweeted on, Eric Decker's got to catch that ball as we watch the Sunday night
right
game.
Through his hands. Wow.
How many times has he done that this year? It's amazing. And Manning's looking like, you got to catch that ball, dude. Anyway. Well, I think with Romo, if you got taxed 2 points for the interceptions, the rushing touchdown he scored helps a lot of it. So he probably still had a pretty good game for you here. Obviously, the opportunities were great, and all 3 guys went for 100, for God's sakes. But Witten, incredible. I jokingly tweeted that we were off 13 catches on our projections for him this week. We'll try and do better next time. My God, 22 targets. You can never really project that, but Witten's been great now for, a month straight now, ever since he snapped out of that funk in that Monday Night Football game. So, obviously, you start him every week at this point, especially in a PPR. He's certainly looking a lot better than a guy like Antonio Gates. Des Bryant, it's a shame. It was almost one of the more dramatic finishes we've ever seen had he hauled that ball in, Paul. And Romo would have thrown for damn near 500 with 2 touchdowns, amazingly so. But he got dinged up, banged around. He's kind of a disaster. But Miles Austin is money in the bank. 16 targets, very reliable with 9 catches for 133. Almost scored a couple of times.
Since we're doing this podcast a little bit earlier than usual tonight because of the storm up and down the East Coast, Sunday Night Football really just getting going. Not a whole lot to report on here in this game so far, other than you mentioned Decker just missed a touchdown. And as we're doing this, it looks like Bill McGahee may have just run one in. Yeah, they're going to give it to him, John. He's looked good. 6 carries, 38 yards leading up to that run.
Yeah, I mean, that's one guy we love this preseason, and we kind of highlighted him as a real nice guy in like the 5th, 6th round, and so far so good. He's in such a great scenario there with Peyton Manning when the look is conducive for a good run. He'll check out of a pass, and he's so smart. And what's really great, and he catches this touchdown, it's a catch. He's been captain checkdown this year, and that's just massive for his fantasy value in any format. And so you're feeling good about it if you got Bill McGahee. Good schedule, too. Of course, he's a little dinged up here on the play.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and I'm sure they're going to review that, too. His knee may have been down. But, all right, that's about going to do it for us tomorrow night, San Francisco and Arizona. So good luck the rest of tonight. Good luck tomorrow night for John Hansen. I'm Paul Kelly. We will talk to you next time.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.